All right. Happy Tuesday, morning, afternoon, night, whatever it is for you guys. Thank you, Kianga. Today I'm gonna present, I guess, a version of my talk at East Denver, but kind of more connected to MakerDAO and basically what we can learn and what we can kind of discuss what we were talking about in the previous I would say nine sessions, 9 weeks, in terms of we're discussing, for example, the possibilities in Web3 and where we are and what Maker can do, and what other possibilities are still out there. And one thing we said is, let me just share my screen if this works. All right, let me know when you guys can see this. So we discussed one of the things that we discussed was how Maker is kind of looking internally now and like focusing inside on how to kind of get the whole Atlas thing going, and figuring it all out and all the stages for that. And the idea is that you go inside for the outside. Like you want our system to be effective for the world, and not just dealing with our own figuring things out for ourselves. So I gave this talk at ETH Denver, and it was about how blockchain mechanisms can prevent dystopia and create an economy of abundance. And obviously that's kind of related to the protocol I'm working on, Abundance Protocol, but it's a broader question really for Web3, because I truly believe that we always say we're early, but I do believe it. I do believe that we're only kind of putting the pieces together. Like maybe it's almost 10 years or 10 years for Ethereum, but if you think about economies, if you think about countries or whatever it is, the first 10 years is nothing. So I do believe that we're only kind of putting the pieces together, and we're only kind of figuring out what the building blocks are and what they can do. And the talk was focused about basically crises and how we can prevent crises, how we can move away from this dystopian future that we could be facing with all these different crises that are enveloping us. And the discussion was that a lot of these crises are based on feedback loops and exponential technology. Feedback loops are basically the lecture off. So the market is an example of an effective feedback loop, where basically you produce something, and an effective feedback loop is basically if something that benefits people, you want more of it, and if it harms people, obviously you want none of it, or at least less of it. So the market is an effective feedback loop in the sense that you create something, people want it, and then they give you money for it, and then you can reinvest it in the business, expand it, and produce more of the things people want and improve on those things. But if you produce something that people don't want, they're not going to buy it, you're not going to have money, and you're not going to produce that because that doesn't make sense in the market. So that's an effective feedback loop. But we have this problem for negative externalities and public goods, that if you create something in the market and then it has negative externalities on others, if it's pollution, or if it's like, if you're social media and you're creating polarization, there's no, the money you make, you don't make it from kind of the external, you make it from the market forces, and you kind of offset your costs at the expense of others. And the same thing for public goods, in the sense that there's no incentive to create them. And obviously, for us in refi, that's kind of, that's the driving force, or the main things. Like, how do we kind of, drive this? How do we create more of that? So there's no incentive to produce it. You can produce it, but you don't get the economic benefit from doing that. And we talked about this before, but I'm going to kind of put it together again, that we have the market, we have externalities and public goods, and that's kind of the interaction between them. But that's been the case for maybe the past 5,000 years. Like, there's nothing new here. Ever since we had money, that's been the case. But the problem is that once we have exponential technology, that's where, the situation kind of becomes worse, because anything you create, now you can have an exponential effect with that. You can make a small change and that can affect hundreds of millions of people. And before that, even like 50 years ago, you didn't really have that, unless it's like nuclear weapons or something. But whatever you did, it had like marginal effects. And now it's exponential, and it's becoming more and more so with our technology. So obviously what we want there to be an incentive for public goods and a disincentive for externalities. And we have actually the reverse now. So this is what we want. And the question is, how do we get there? How do we create incentives for the public good? And to get there, basically, it's an economic incentive. So the idea is, if you create impact, if you benefit society, you want this impact to be somehow rewarded. And you want there to be a disincentive. Basically, you want an effective feedback loop for the incentive to create public goods, and an effective feedback loop for negative externalities. So if someone creates negative externalities, that there is a cost to that. Now we basically have government that should reward people for the public good and somehow penalize people for externalities. But the problem is that with exponential technology, what happens is, yes, Kianga, government boo. The problem is that with exponential technology, what happens is that government becomes less and less effective. Because you have technology that basically, if it's social media platforms, you can say anything, and you're the more toxic the environment is that you create, you can actually make a lot more money. If you put advertising and stuff like that, and that creates this distrust, and that's what kind of creates a cascading effect where even externalities that people want to tackle, suddenly you're not sure about, who's creating more externalities. Is it really corporations, or maybe government is just overreaching, and so on. And that's because of the social media creates a crisis of trust. So it's all builds on each other, and that's kind of why you have more and more externalities. That's kind of the point of this exponential tech. That's, you have the incentive to create this toxicity, which builds and makes government less effective for both externalities and for public goods. So the question is, how do we change that? And that's where I believe, at least, and making a point here, making a claim that blockchain mechanisms can help in this area. And just, if we look at the four quadrants, we have the private goods, club goods, common goods, and public goods. And the main difference between these, obviously, there's effective feedback loops for these, because you can exclude them, which means that you can create a system where you create something and then you can have an exchange for it. For common goods and public goods, you cannot have that, because you create something that benefits people, but there's no, if it's information, if you're creating knowledge, there's no real exchange there. You're kind of putting it out in the world, if you want more people to know about this thing. and it's very hard to capture that. So that's kind of the main difference between these two. And that's kind of one way to think about it. That one idea I kind of present is if you have a book and you just create, physical copies of it, you can make money from it as a private good. You can also take the same content from the book and then put it online, but still sell it. And then you can make it as a club good. Let's say if people subscribe to your channel, they can get free copies of this book, but only if they subscribe. So you can still exclude people. So that increases maybe how many people can view it, but not as much if it was in this area, if you make it non-excludable. So you can take still the same book as a physical book and move it and maybe donate it to a library, and then it becomes a common good. But it's still rivalrous in the sense that, if there's only one book, only one person at a time can read it, and then over time it degrades. So that's what the common goods are, because that's what makes them rivalrous. Public goods is if you take the same content of the book here, you make a digital copy of it, and then you just put it out there in the world. And then it's a public good. Anyone can access it. There's no problem of one person using it so others can't. And that maximizes the impact. And that's the main difference between impact and profit at the moment in our market. That if you put something out there that maximizes impact, you're kind of reducing your ability to make profits. And it's also an issue of efficient use of resources, because if the same amount of energy that you put toward creating the book is equivalent, but here very few people, maybe, I don't know, thousands of, or maybe if it's a really popular book, millions of people can buy it, but here it's in the billions. So it's like, difference of scale. But here you make money from it, and here you don't. So your self-interest is here, while the common interest is over there. And also, if you create a physical book, for example, you have to use more resources, so that creates externalities. Maybe you're, destroying the environment in the process. So that's kind of the main axes that we're dealing with at the moment. It's impact versus profit. So the question is, how do you make it profit equals impact? Basically, how do you make this an effective feedback loop for this area? And if we look at the existing mechanisms that we're dealing with, we have government, philanthropy, crowdfunding. That's the traditional ones. And in each of these, you're still taking money from these left-hand quadrants and you're putting it toward the public good. We realize the importance of it. We realize why we need these public and common goods, but we don't really have mechanisms to put it there, to create those self-sustainably, to create those in a way that there is a feedback loop between the impact you create here and how much you're compensated for it. So if you create more impact, you're not going to get suddenly more money here. I mean, you might, to some extent, but not. It's not effective. And in crypto, we have quadratic funding, retroactive funding. This is for public goods and common goods. And these mechanisms, they still work. What they do, what's the benefit at the moment, is the quadratic funding makes the distribution a lot more closer to what people want. So it's like a more higher throughput of people's preferences. So it's like, higher throughput democracy. But you still need external sources of funding. You still need kind of a matching pool, and that's where most of the money goes toward those public goods or common goods. Retroactive funding, the major benefit is since it's retroactive, that means that you only reward something that already created impact. So it's it's more verifiable. But at the moment, still the source of funding still comes from the same from the left-hand quadrant. And then we have consensus mechanisms. There's obviously different ones, but that's the first mechanism that we currently have that creates this feedback loop, that you're creating the common good of network security, but you use just the money generated within this ecosystem that you're creating. It doesn't have to come from outside. It's basically supply and demand, and then inflation is what rewards that common good. And in terms of if we look at the sources of funding for these and how much for the common public goods, if we look at the scale, so obviously government is in the trillions and these philanthropies in the billions, and these are still tens and hundreds of millions, but still nowhere near even close to what we want. But consensus mechanisms, Bitcoin just went to all-time high today. So that's all money that pretty much goes toward the common good of network security. So that's all here. That's right, Ken. I agree. So then that's kind of why I'm saying that we're still early. We're still just learning the system, learning our possibilities, and we introduce something called value consensus. And the idea is that to build on the consensus mechanism, but to do it not just for this one specific common good, which is basically it's a sort of simple decision. The system kind of works automatically. Pretty much, you just you produce a new block, then the nodes in the protocol decide did it follow the rules, yes or no, and then it rewards the producer through currency inflation. But there's ways to kind of make it sustainable, either by reducing supply by burning tokens, or if there's more demand for the actual ecosystem. So that's how the consensus mechanism works. But the idea is, how do we create something that's sustainable for any type of common public good? And for that, we need alignment. We need data in alignment, really. So if some common public good creates impact, first of all, you want the data to know what impact it created, but you also want the ecosystem to be aligned on knowing, on valuing how much this impact is relevant to the ecosystem. And that's something that's kind of one main issue within MakerDAO, the issue of alignment. How do we maintain it? How do we create it? And what are the dynamics of maintaining alignment? And the idea for the value consensus is that we want this. The way you create alignment is that everyone in the ecosystem wants maximum growth, because that's they get the most benefit from being in this ecosystem, because they have the most economic opportunity in it, and they also want to maintain the value of the currency. So if they give money to public goods, they don't want the value of their currency to go down. And if you have both, then you can have alignment. Another way of looking at it is basically, if you have this point where the impact created in the ecosystem is equal, where impact equals to the reward, then you have kind of the best condition, because both the public good creator is compensated fairly, and also the whole ecosystem grows the most. So this chart is kind of, I would say, maybe the most relevant to MakerDAO, and maybe thinking through sub-DAOs and how their tokens and those dynamics could work, but that's a bit a separate issue. But thinking where we are on this chart, and the title of this talk was supposed to be public good minimalism versus maximalism. So maximalism would be here, where impact equals the reward for the public good, and minimalism will be, well, somewhere along this area where basically we're undervaluing the public good. But what happens is when you undervalue public goods, you just get fewer public goods. You don't you have less people who contribute toward creating them. So I don't know where we are on this chart. We're definitely not here. We know that no one is. But the question is, should we be moving in this direction, or should we kind of accept some point that we think is good for us, or like kind of good enough? Overvaluing, that's not really an issue anywhere at the moment, unless you just give a lot of money for public goods and hope for the best. Actually, I mean, maybe some L1s are like that. I don't know, but that's kind of the dynamics. And one issue is, if you're here, then you have alignment, because then kind of everyone is satisfied that the ecosystem grows the most and public goods are rewarded. So if you're a contributor, if you're a user, kind of everyone is happy. If you're somewhere here, then there is misalignment, because what happens is you want to if the tokenomics are based on value go up, basically you would think that you would have alignment within the ecosystem, right? You would think that everyone wants the value of their tokens to go up, but there's a conflict there, because not everyone has the same kind of time preferences. So let's say if someone has more information than someone else, that let's say the token chart is like, you have the chart, and then that something, you have some information that maybe some bad news are coming. So you obviously, if you have that information, others don't, then even though everyone is supposed to be interested in kind of the value of their tokens going up, suddenly you have misalignment between people who have more information and those who have less, because those who have more, they're going to sell theirs, hoping that when the token is cheaper, they could buy more. So that's kind of a fundamental issue, a fundamental dynamic of adversarial systems, of markets. In markets, you're always going to have adversarial dynamics. You're never going to have alignment, and it's not really an issue of improving information, improving capacity, whatever it is. It's an inherent dynamic of markets, because whoever has more information, has an ability to make more money. But you don't actually have to have the information. Like if you're a big player, if you're a whale, you can even pretend to have information. Like everyone is here, you suddenly sell with no information, then people sell more, and then you buy when it's lower. So you don't really need information. It's not a matter of the information itself. You're just creating dynamics, because there is this inherent misalignment. So again, even though everyone supposedly should be striving within an ecosystem to have the value increase, that's not what happens. But if you're here, which basically means that there's stability, like this is pseudo stability, because it's still going to fluctuate, it's not going to be perfect, but there's no inherent interest in increasing the value of the token. What happens is that you benefit from creating value, from creating more value for the ecosystem, and then everyone just, the more value you create, the more you're compensated. Then you can have alignment. Then you can have these dynamics. And so this is very, I guess, most relevant to like sub-DAOs and how they would think of their dynamics. And this is very experimental, obviously. Like we don't yet have a system that does that. This is kind of a very experimental thing, but this is something to consider when we think about alignment, when we think about dynamics that affect us internally, and how do we create a system that would, instead of having slower growth, how do we maximize growth? And I don't really want to go into all the mechanisms and like the system, how it works. I have it in the white paper. That's why I kind of just wanted to focus on what's more relevant to Maker and what kind of makes the most sense to discuss. But basically the idea is that if we have a system where we can create these dynamics, where we can achieve this point, which is like a Schelling point where impact equals profit, where you maximally reward public goods, then you basically create the effective feedback loops that we want. We can create feedback loops where the public good is rewarded, and obviously the market is still going to work. These two are kind of going to work together, and you're basically just expanding the market because you're essentially creating a market for public goods. And the idea is that one way to think about it is, well, why don't we have a market for public goods today? Because if you create something that's a public good, there's no reason to pay for it because people are already getting the benefit, but there's no reason to pay for it unless it's just out of kindness or whatever. But kindness is not a feedback loop, and like not a market mechanism. So the reason this can work in a value consensus is the reason you reward every instance of public good creation is because you want more public goods to be created for your ecosystem. So if you reward them, then others who create public goods will be like, well, I also want to be rewarded, so I'll create public goods for this specific ecosystem. If you don't have that, if you undervalue the public good, then others will think, well, why should I create public goods? I'm not going to be rewarded. I'll just focus here because here I'm rewarded for what I'm making. So if you create the dynamics where you do have an effective feedback loop where the ecosystem wants the maximal growth associated with the public goods, then you can create the effective feedback loops and you can have this system work. And also, once you have that, then there's less incentive to have externalities, to create externalities. Because why would you want to be here if you can be here? Basically, why would you want to make a little bit money here if you can make a lot money? If you have more impact, you would make more money. So you kind of want to be, as far to the right here as possible, which means that you want to create, you don't want to create any externalities at all. You want to be somewhere here, which minimizes, disincentivizes the creation of externalities. And then even though we would have the exponential technology, it would all go toward, creating more impact and growing the ecosystem and benefiting people. So again, I didn't want to make this talk about my protocol. I kind of wanted to make it as relevant as possible to MakerDAO and to accessibility, actually, because that's part of what it is. Because if we create the interfaces, if we create the public goods that allow more use of DAI, that allow kind of growing this infrastructure, then obviously the ecosystem grows. Obviously, there's more demand for this ecosystem, and that's kind of, in my thinking, that's kind of why do people use DAOers, is because you do have all this infrastructure around the world, pretty much, that's built for dollars. Wherever you go, you can very easily and simply, even if you're in Europe or wherever, exchange, just use your credit card, and it doesn't matter because people don't, you don't feel it. You just use your credit card, but it's built on the exchange rate, and everything kind of happens automatically. It's all abstracted away. So the question is, how do we make that for crypto? How do we make those systems where all these user experience is abstracted away, and you have this infrastructure where people can just use their crypto, use DAI for their daily activity, not just within finance, not just within the traditional system or the DeFi system, but rather actually use money for exchanging goods and services, and benefiting their communities, benefiting the planet, really, if you have less criminality. Let me see what Mike, do you think about the industry controversy over points and farming? Do you think it gets the wrong use? I think that's how things are right now. Like, I think that's kind of the most common use, to be honest, right now for a lot of tokens is just farming. Like, you don't use them to buy groceries, right? So if we want, obviously we need to think about sustainable uses, about things that benefit people. But as long as we only focus on the DeFi, only focus on, farming and, staking and stuff like that, then, like, I don't see why, why we wouldn't focus on that. What I'm saying is, like, if that's where the money is, if that's what currently generates, the value for tokens, of course, that's what we would be thinking about. But that's kind of the reason why, I want to focus on the infrastructure, the things that actually benefit people. And unless you have that, then, what are you going to do? So that's why we need this, why we need to have the public goods, create them, reward them fairly, and then we can have systems that we wouldn't think about the farming. We wouldn't think about all these things that kind of work at the moment. But, if you have a system that just, this is, you have your DAI and you just use it for your daily activity. Like, you want to pay rent, you want to go to the grocery store, you want to go to a movie, you can just use DAI. If you have the infrastructure for that, then no one would need to kind of think about the farming, if that answers the question. And just another thing is that sub-DAOs, like, that's kind of where we can experiment, where we can try new things. And I believe that's the opportunity to test different systems, test things that go beyond the existing norms, the existing kind of dynamics.
Yeah, while Bona Public is typing, first of all, thank you. This is just terrific. Wasn't able to be in Denver, so we're getting the VIP. We're getting the VIP recap. Yeah, so yeah, of course, thinking about accessibility and sub-DAOs, and that, of course, with Endgame, we'll see farming of the sub-DAO tokens having governance utility, and it's a governance incentive. So yeah, I mean, I think this is a really important conversation for us to have at ReFi, and we're the natural, I think, community, given our priorities and our strategic perspective, to think more broadly, as you point out, about what's going to be the demand case outside of the DeFi games. But yeah, I mean, I think I share what I think is what you're pointing out, which is we shouldn't be overly, I mean, I'll say I'm not overly critical of what we've seen so far. I think that speculation is what we see in all markets, what we see in all early technologies, and what you outlined it so beautifully, the market forces and the true incentives that actually breed discovery, that breed adoption. We have wild swings, we have booms and busts, and unfortunately we've had a ton of fraud and rug pulls, and we're probably going to be in for a world of hurt after the hangover from
just
whatever
getting started
about to come down the pike. So yeah, Bonopo is still typing, and anyone else, of course, your written comments or come off mic. But yeah, okay, I'll pause here and let you address Bonopo's comment.
Very good presentation. Thank you. One expectation we have from the purpose system relates to how sub-DAOs and mini-DAOs can organize and create public goods initiatives, such as forming a community for individuals who are deeply concerned about a certain change. And they can come together and have the exponential tech provide the infra. You can have the DeFi and yield generating portion of the system work in the backend without communities needing to understand how money is created. Right, yeah, exactly. And that's kind of the point, that this is community centered. This is ecosystem centered. So this is not kind of like, you're not replacing like the US government with this, although I don't know, maybe you could. You're replacing kind of the community's lack of ability to have control over what they produce. Like the communities can be focused on very specific things, and then they can have their dynamics, their tokenomics that kind of benefit the most production of the public good. Not necessarily even in this system. Like you can have like other mechanisms out there, but I think that is the benefit of sub-DAOs, and if they kind of experiment more and try different things, I think that's kind of what is really exciting. Seeing people competing over the typing, so. Portion generate die. Do you mean?
So I'm sorry. We're kind of asking Bona Publica.
Oh, okay.
It says you could have the DeFi and yield generating portion of the system work in the back end without communities needing to understand how money is created. So I guess what I was asking is, needing to understand how money is created is meaning how DAI is created? I thought it was interesting. I just couldn't understand
any form.
Okay, I have to think about it. Thank you.
It's also how gates perform public good. I think there is also utility for NewGov to unlock.
Yeah, I'll comment a little bit about my comment. I'm not sure where the language is today, but I believe at one point, part of the idea with the gates and with the investment, there's another acronym, CASE, right? CAIS, that these tools we're developing would not just be kind of internal governance agents, but that also this utility. I mean, this is something that I think has flown under the radar, that your new Gov token is going to be able to pay for or use some of the AI agents that MakerDAO will be developing for its own analysis. I think this is still in the part of the design, right? Because this is how we have sub-DAOs, right? Able to sort of analyze a business opportunity, spin up really quickly, execute, succeed, fail, spin down. We talked about this a couple of weeks ago, I think, where it was like some of the language suggests that sub-DAOs really run off of very, very few actual individual people doing any kind of centralized management of the sub-DAO. So once you've got the maker organized or funded, developed, community developed, we started this now, the AI tools that help makers sub-DAOs and many, many diverse and niche businesses. We talked about this also last week with you, Christian. The specialization, leveraging the gates or the case, and then that the new Gov token has this utility where now the impact communities, the impact projects will have the same resources in terms of this AI capability that like large, well-funded organizations. And so this is another dimension in which MakerDAO or new DAO is going to be absolutely just changing the world and changing. You're bringing about a lot that you talked about. I mean, hopefully, right, Mike? Like figuring out. I mean, that would be just a tremendous game changer, right? I mean, I don't know how many people on the call have started using the AI tooling, and over the past 6 months or 3 months, I've been trying to follow it more and more. Mm-hmm. But just your power as one person or a small underfunded team to be able to analyze information to build a business. I mean, the leveling of opportunity is going to be incredible.
Right. So if I understand correctly, and correct me if I'm wrong, but part of the idea of the sub-DAOs is they create kind of demand for DAI, because whatever is their niche use, you would want to use DAI for that system, and then you create demand for it, and then that's part of what builds this overall system. And then you have like a separate token that runs the sub-DAO, but the idea is that they both create demand and also kind of maintain the stability, if I got it right. And then you obviously can have different niche use cases. That's why you create these different conditions, and the gate obviously helps you kind of expand your capability of the sub-DAO.
Yeah,
if I understand correctly.
No, yeah, exactly. And then, but then also that community. So this is to Bona Publica's point about earlier up in the chat. I'm kind of envisioning that the tools will not just be usable for the specific sub-DAO and mini-DAO initiatives, but to the point of these being public goods, that it's all going to be available, and maybe it's token gated, but it's still now available to folks who are not even farming, who are not even participating in the governance rewards, but will still be able to utilize, the intelligence that the sub-DAO ecosystem, creates through the integration of, the AI flywheel effect that is new DAO. So that's like, that could just ripple. I mean, that's could be some crazy butterfly effect.
Yeah, and I thought it's also just even outside kind of the maker world, the maker ecosystem, like if it's for research and stuff like that, that you can still use the system, the gate, to, for public goods.
Exactly.
I love the presentation. One of the challenges I'm having with my reading of Endgame regarding mini DAOs is that they need to be created by allocator DAOs. Is this true? That's not a question for me. I know there is a dynamic there. I'm not sure what it is. If anyone wants to jump in.
Yeah.
Yes. Uses the value of AVC have introduces incentive problems where allocator DAOs might not want to cannibalize themselves, let alone that allocator DAOs might not be focused on certain types of ideas since they are funded allocators with specific mandate.
What do you mean by reduces the value AVCs have? What's the connection that you're seeing, Paul?
Is this because you're saying it creates inflation, or?
Maybe you meant sub-DAOs, not AVCs.
Allocators become gatekeepers.
I'm not sure I follow exactly. I mean, I think it's sort of an open market, a business that they have to compete out in the world.
Right, but if I understand correctly, basically you're saying that to create a sub-DAO, you need kind of permission from the allocator DAO to create it, and therefore the allocator DAO kind of is a gatekeeper to innovation. And like if something that the allocator DAO doesn't want, then that's not going to be created. Is that, yeah.
Well, they will definitely. I mean, there's a progression of gatekeepers in a sense that, we right now only even we sort of have one with Spark. We have a couple, obviously, Quant and Qual, but it's going to be a long time before there's more than the 6 allocator DAOs, or actually just 4 allocator DAOs, right? 2 of the sub DAOs are facilitator DAOs. And then there's going to be a central core process of incubating. But I think of the ideas over time, as particularly once the end game actually launches and the core is ossified and the rules are so, kind of detailed, that the process should be pretty automatic for getting frictionless, permissionless within the rules, spinning up of allocator DAOs, so that if there was someone who has ideas that would work at a mini DAO level, and there weren't opportunities or there was no uptake with a particular allocator DAO, those interested parties could just go ahead and spin up their own sub DAO. But in terms of where the AVC wants to push, I mean, that's a good comment to just segue before we run out of time, that a little bit of nuts and bolts, and then Mike, I just want to make sure to leave time at the end for you to wrap up. But just in terms of the business of AVC stuff, this is our last subcommittee meeting of the quarter, and we are particularly kind of focused on the accessibility scope. And I think this was just a terrific presentation to have this week, but keeping in mind that in this bootstrapping phase, our scope proposals are limited to dealing with advisory committees. Those of our ADs who've been following for a while know we've kind of had a pretty consistent approach to responding to that in our scope proposal documents. And over the past 2 or 3 quarters, the governance scope is kind of where we've been commenting on things above and beyond the advisory councils, because there's not much more to say on advisory councils than we've already said. So after this meeting, we, Mike, Christian, and I will be looking at last quarter's governance strategy and the scope proposal, and thinking about what we've learned about the Atlas, the new Atlas, and what may be appropriate to update there, and then also incorporate, just some of the great contributions that we've discussed, this quarter. And hopefully we'll see how our timing goes. We may have time to share that new draft, particularly so our ADs can maybe comment before we actually ratify it and have to publish it at the end of the quarter. So please do keep an eye out on the channel. I'm not sure if we necessarily will tag people, so you'll see just over the next couple of weeks posts in the channel, because we won't have any more scheduled meetings. We'll do all of this asynchronously. Yeah, I just wanted to mention that. We'll be async for the remainder of the quarter, which actually also, hello, it's a year. It's 4 quarters that we've been running and doing Refi AVC. Yay! Woo! You all don't look very excited.
I need a celebration. Oh, there you go.
That's a joke.
That counts.
Say you don't look excited. Because I can't see anyone's face.
We're frozen.
But yeah, thank you to every single one of you here on this call and who've been part of this community for the past year. For Space Exponential, who was a member in the earlier part of our journey, and we had Robin with us from DAO last quarter, and Mike. It's been just great having you involved over the past few quarters, and Christian this quarter, and we'll be just continuing with that in this next season. And we've heard from LB that there will be a kind of Atlas Axis community call in the not too distant future. I see Ecosystem has something on the calendar for Thursday as far as the new DAO. But some of you on this call I know are drafters. Clokey, True Name. Julia, are you a drafter? Julia, I think. So you all are busy. And looks like it will sync up nicely with the start of Q2, April. For us, I'm just projecting, but that we'll have information and you all will have progressed in your work that, we'll probably be able to hit the ground running on more active review work of the new Atlas. But that we also really want to continue with these presentations from MakerDAO's members and, growing the community of Acre members who join this call and present, what they're working on, their perspectives, their expertise, as we also, improve our understanding of how AVCs are meant to function most effectively, how we are going to use AI capabilities in our operations, as well as, of course, how it's working throughout the entire kind of Atlas design. So we'll really look forward to that. And those were just some kind of general housekeeping points I wanted to make. So back to you, Mike, for final send-off.
Final 3 seconds. All right.
5 minutes.
No, I'm joking. Sorry. No, I actually think
anything you want to share? Sorry, anything else about ETH Denver? For those of us who weren't there, giving us your perspectives, what you saw, anything that Maker people should know who weren't there.
So what's interesting is I actually left before the main event, which was kind of crazy. But yeah, I got there on the 23rd. The main event was 29th. I actually left on 28th. So it's only kind of in the builder part, which was still kind of exciting because it's good to see people building really to, creating the future. That's how I see it, at least. So that was, I enjoyed that part. So I missed the all kind of the main excitement and all that. So if anyone else went, I feel kind of jealous also. So, but if I can kind of close our quarter, I guess I'm doing that. So yeah, I mean, this was tons of fun. I think I feel like when I joined Maker my first quarter, I was completely lost. I'm still lost, but not completely. But it's really like, just from my perspective, I'm enjoying the process. I'm enjoying what Maker's building. And there's kind of all these dynamics trying to work out what makes the most sense. Like, how do we kind of align this massive system that we have internally to make it the most effective, both internally and externally. Always lost, always. Well, probably not as much as me though. So just from my perspective, I'm loving it. I'm enjoying this work. I'm looking forward to the next quarter, and the documents. I wouldn't say I love that, but it's very important work, and I think that's kind of our concrete contribution, maybe. Maybe I'll wrap there, and I'll actually back to you, Kianga. I think you
Thank you.
should have the last 3 seconds.
Well, I want to say that I've been studying the Atlas, wanting to get a better sense of end game, so not where we are now, but yeah, these quarterly documents, what are they really supposed to accomplish? And I've been actually discovering some very interesting things. I think we'll have a chance to get into it with the Atlas Access work, and we can begin to revise our approach to that document. Because right now it is a little bit of a technical kind of, we talked about this a little bit last week. I think it feels very it just doesn't do anything. It just sort of sits there. And we don't really know that much more than it being a kind of exercise, sort of disconnected exercise. But it's anyway been a great documentation for us to start to flesh out our values and strategic perspective. And I'll be excited to see what we're going to add this quarter. And we don't have to kill ourselves, right? Writing a white paper. Oh, also, this is what I wanted to. This is why I'm rambling, because I knew there was something I forgot to mention, which was, Mike, you released your book.
I did. It took forever, but I did. Yeah.
Can you tell everyone about your book, and can you let everyone know how they can get a hold of your book? And then, of course, we'll post on the forum the link to this video, and hopefully we can share a version of your slides as well. But in the final seconds, Mike, tell the people a little bit about your book, and then we'll be done.
Sure. So the book. So I put the link right there in the chat. But basically, it's a free book. You can get it for free. Basically, it was supposed to be a book for normies, really, for non-crypto people and for crypto people a little bit, with the idea of that we are early and these are the possibilities of what crypto can do. And the presentation is kind of like the half hour or whatever summary of the book. Not summary. I mean I go into a lot more stuff there, obviously. But yeah, the idea is kind of to present crypto as this is what this technology can do for the world, and this is why we need it. Like, there's all these problems that we're facing, and there's a reason for those problems. This is the reason, and this is what crypto can do, and so on. So you can get it for free in the link below, or there's also like a $9.69 on Amazon Kindle if you really want. But yeah, if you want, share it with your friends. That's like the most, I guess, most benefit that there is from the book. Just share it. Oh, thank you. I appreciate that. And thank you for you know, pointing this out, Kiang. I really appreciate it. Everyone went quiet. All right. All right. Thank you, everyone.